central piece of what I do. Part of what I'm going to talk about today. The little preview for you there. But yeah, so I only work with buyers. Buyers make up the entirety of my business, and it's fantastic for me because it's what I can do. Now, most people, especially who here is a solo? You pick solo agents. Okay, so solo agents typically have to diversify a little bit unless you have relationships with people who are doing the thing that you don't want to do and you're comfortable providing referral fees for that. Otherwise, you generally need to diversify. Because I have a partner, I don't have to do that anymore. But up until this year, I work with both buyers and listings pretty consistently. The bulk of my business is buyers. I always have. So anyway, all of that to say, today the topic that we were talking about is just kind of in general, what is a buyer need? What are agents looking for or struggling with when we talk about buyer agency, and even just working with buyers in the current market climate, or even how you build that business, how you make it something that is sustainable and enjoyable, because not everyone is passionate about working with buyers. So what I want to kind of help us talk through today a little bit, and you know, all the information will be on slides. If you want them after, you may absolutely reach out. I'm happy to send them to you. For me, it's a little more conversational, so I will ask you to talk back if that makes you uncomfortable. I don't. So we're gonna have some great conversations. We're gonna talk about the things we're facing, but some questions, smart answers, buyer concerns in today's market. This is going to be from the perspective of an agent and not a buyer. So our buyer concerns are going to be different from the concerns that a buyer is going to have. We'll talk about some of that, but we really want to think as an agent, how are we encountering buyers in the market that we're in? So as we are thinking about the market right now, I think about like the panic that we hear going on in our market from a lot of different places, whether it's from the news, from our actual clients, from our friends who aren't even clients saying things that we're like, that's just not true, but they've heard it from somewhere, and so disseminating information, there's a lot of panic in real estate right now. So my first place I want to start with is, what questions are you getting when you talk with clients? Whether buyers, even friends, not just clients, what are you hearing from people about real estate right now?
I should wait to buy.
I should wait to buy, okay. Wait to buy, any other interest rates, yep.
Still, even from intelligent people, I'm still hearing, well, it's gonna crash, the bubble's gonna burst,
Right.
It's gonna crash.
Yeah, hearing that a lot.
Not a lot of homes out there that I want. Too much, homes need too much repair and maintenance.
Yeah, that is absolutely what we're hearing. What else? What else are we hearing? Anything from not clients? Anything you're hearing from the people that are around you in your life that, yeah?
I mean, I was talking to a recruiter who said he has 8 buyers in the pipeline, all 3 again, interest rates and also low inventories.
Yep, okay.
Prices are too high.
Prices are too high. We love that one. We love prices are too high. Because so there is panic in the market. We hear panic. We hear a lot of people deferring decision making. They're beyond making the decision not to make a decision, which is one of the most frustrating ones that we can hear. So what I want to do is I want to break down kind of 4 different avenues to talk about the panic in the market from the perspective that buyers are feeling, but that we as agents are experiencing with our buyers. So our learning objectives today are these 4 points here. So your agenda doesn't matter. Be the education-centric agent. Know your market, and be the resource. All caps "the" being the important article there. So these are the 4 things that we are going to talk through today here in our class, and explain what those mean. Normally I do like fun little bullet by bullet animations, but I didn't do that because I have 8 buyers right now, so I did not have time to make this presentation pretty. So I apologize for that. But we'll go through everything. Don't feel overwhelmed when it comes on the screen. Just FYI. So first thing, your agenda doesn't matter. This is a fun one when working with buyers. It's something that does come up a lot more when we work on listings because we are negotiating some more substantial pieces of a listing contract. But I want to get 3% commission on the deal. Your buyer doesn't care. No matter how much you go through the buyer agency agreement, no matter how you talk through how it all works, your buyer does not care about your commission. Not like a listing does. A listing is gonna have a much more vested interest in what you're making, because they're paying for that, you know, and sometimes our buyers do end up paying some commission under the rule that we're in now, but your buyer does not care about commissions. So working on how to talk about commissions with your buyer when you're going through your buyer agency is a really important piece, and there's a whole class for that, yes.
What have you seen in terms of, have you found any deals where there's no seller commission being offered yet?
I have not had a single transaction without a seller commission. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, doesn't mean it's not happening. I have not had a single one. The other piece of that too, and again, this is a whole separate class, when you're doing your buyer agency, one of the things you're gonna hear from people is, well, what about everything that changed? I heard a lot about the stuff changing in the news. My go-to that you're welcome to steal from me is, nothing actually changed, the way we talk about things did. And then I explain the commission piece, and people are like, oh, okay, cool. Nothing has actually changed in the way things are supposed to work. It's just how we communicate that to our clients. And so that typically is the easiest out in that sense too.
I'm sorry, I should have missed you saying this. Are you the agent that kind of like tries to get ahead of it, like, you know, tell them about it before they ask you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's part of my buyer consult. It's part of the conversation when I'm going through, when we talk about commissions, I say, you've probably heard that these things have happened. Let me just explain to you. Nothing has actually changed. It's just the way we talk about things has changed. And in the end, it protects you as the buyer significantly more than you were protected before.
More disclosure, more open.
Yeah, exactly. And just, you make it very positive and very succinct too. But again, your buyer doesn't really care about your commission. They have no interest in you wanting to get that commission or you achieving that commission. So your agenda in that sense doesn't matter. I want to be in the $1 Million Club, so I want to make sure that I'm having enough sales every month to hit that number, because I want to be celebrated for having $1 million in sales. Your buyer does not care. They do not care about any other transaction you have going on. Their transaction is the only thing that they are going to care about now. So you have to modulate your own expectations for that too, and stay focused on that for them. I want to sell more than Allison Simon. That's always the, you know, who do you have as your pedestal person? It's not necessarily Allison, but there's someone that you've seen. When I first started out, I was like, I'm gonna be the next Mike McMahon. I'm not, and that's okay. But all that to say is, I'm the best me, the greatest version that there could be. No, but we all have that thing that we're like, we're driven. We want to achieve our goal. We've worked on our GPS and our 411 and our business plan for the year, and we're driven by what we want our numbers to look like. Your buyer does not care. They do not care about your status within the brokerage. They do not care what your numbers look like on an annual level. They care about their transaction. I think blank neighborhood is better than blank neighborhood. First of all, that's illegal. Second, you have to be open to this idea that when you're working with your buyers, they're going to have specific ideas of where they want to be. And you may hear them and say, based on what you're saying, I think this other area is better. But if they're telling you this is an area they want to look at, show them and let them experience it. You know, you have to listen to what they're saying, even if you do know, hey, this other area sounds like it would fit what you're looking for. They're not going to care about that until you give them the evidence of that. So go with them, show them places that they think they want, and then because you're listening to them and listening to their feedback, then you have the ability to give them direct comparisons. So all that to say that agenda of, I know what's best for you, your client's not going to experience and understand until you show them, in that sense. And then the last one, I'm only going to work with clients who have a budget above X dollars. There are a lot of really successful agents who have limits on what type of client they will work with. That has worked really well for the last 5 years. In the market that we are looking at right now, being super, super picky about what price point you want to work in can be really inhibiting. And I say that as someone who currently has buyers pre-approved at 150,000 and buyers pre-approved at 1.2 million. By not limiting yourself, you will have so many more opportunities. And I had a client 4 years ago, their price point was 250. They have sent me referral business that has closed over 3 million in volume since then. So you don't know where your business is going to come from in the future, and in a market that is tougher, that requires you to work harder, putting limits on your own business will actually stifle you
Yeah, and also that 250 buyers, and we hopefully have 500,000 buyer in 5 years.
Exactly, and even if they're not, if you treat them like they're your $1.2 million buyer, you're going to get referrals, you're going to grow your business, and you're gonna find yourself in a place where you're like, oh, I maybe have too many people to work with at one time. And that feels like something that is not a real thing, but it is absolutely a real thing. If you will commit to not thinking about that piece of it, if you will work with whoever presents himself to you, if they're a right fit for you. Not every buyer is going to be the right buyer for you, and that's okay too. Learning that difference is hard, but also key. But again, your agenda for your business does not matter to your buyer, especially in a market when we have all these questions that are swirling about what's going on. Does that make sense? You know, it's a little bit less tangible than our other points, but I think it's a really important one to keep front of mind as you're working in the market with buyers. They do not care what your agenda is.
What's your average, how many houses you show for people, agreement sale?
Well, it depends. I mean, I tell every client I work with, there's no right answer. You might fall in love with the first house you see, you might fall in love with the 30th house you see. Neither of those is the wrong thing, because every person is different and experiences it differently. You know, and some people are gonna have a heart reaction to a property, some people are gonna have a head reaction to a property. Some people are gonna have both. But again, setting those expectations up front and saying, this is how this works. You also have to set your own boundaries in that too. So if your client is sending you all of these properties they want to see, you have to be proactive and look through and be like, these 7 do not fit anything that you said you want to see. Why are these important for you to see? Instead of just saying we're not going to, find out why they want to see it. And you may find out from that we don't need to see those properties too. So you're still in control of the process in that sense. But it just comes back to the communication between you and your client. How many? But yeah, there's no set number. I mean, currently I have a buyer, we went under contract after seeing 5 properties. I have another buyer that we're actually in the 30s now. So that is a real number. Yeah, we're in the 30s on the number of properties we've seen.
Do you ever
Right, different.
fire a client because of that?
Not necessarily because of that. It depends on if I can tell their motivation, because this client is very motivated, but they also have specific things they're looking for, and I get that. So they're a special client in that sense, but like, I only fire clients if they're an asshole. I mean, truly, if they're an asshole, or if during the process I find out, like, you're not really, you don't want to buy, you just want to see. You know, and that's pretty easy to suss out along the way, because you got to go through a lot of steps. Like, I don't show properties until someone's pre-approved or I have their finances. So like, if they're a cash buyer, I have to have a copy of their financial statement. If they're a financed buyer, I must have their pre-approval in hand. I will not show a single property until I. And that really helps weed out people who are not serious too. That also goes for clients who are like, hey, I'm like a year out. I'm still talking to your lender, not gonna do the pre-approval yet. I'm like, well, if you're out, then we're not gonna go look at things too, you know? Or we might, sometimes I'll look at the buyers and say like, okay, we're a year out. Every 3 months, we'll do a Saturday and see 3 or 4 things that line up with what you wanna purchase, so you have a sense of what's available. But we're not gonna do it more often than that until we're in active phase. So all of those things you can kind of stitch together to make it work for your schedule.
If somebody that says that you're out, that sees a problem, something like, maybe we have to speed moving on.
Exactly, but I want them to do that after I have a buyer agency with them, and I want them to figure that out right out of the house, not when I'm showing the properties.
One of the things that work for me is find out what the lease situation is, like what's the
Yeah.
situation.
And finding out their lease is part of your buyer consultation. I mean, that should be one of your main questions as you're looking at timeline. Because then you can also, for yourself, say, okay, so the earliest we could do it, counting back mortgage overlap, and be like, in your own timeline whether they realize it or not.
Well, know what the penalty is, right?
Yeah.
So know what the penalty is, and see if the house is not funding that big penalty.
Yeah.
If they don't, they can't.
Yeah, exactly. So there are a lot of different factors where you can kind of suss out what the timeline looks like. But at the same time, protect yourself and your time, because it is valuable. But also understand that the more flexibility you have is going to bring you more clientele.
I have a question.
Yeah.
No, I think it's self-answering, but go ahead anyway. You said with these people that are, like a year or more out, or, again, whatever that means, right?
Yeah.
You show houses every couple of months on like a Saturday. And I get you do that to kind of stay in touch, keep them top of mind, keep
Yeah.
yourself top of mind, whatever, but realistically, right, like, nothing we're gonna see now is gonna be on the market in a year. right?
Exactly.
Why are we doing this? Why are you wasting your Saturday, like, Mr. Customer, like, why, what are you?
Yeah, and
Why are
typically
you
that's how
doing
the
this?
conversation goes. I very rarely do it. I have that as an offer to folks that are long term. But I always set the expectation. Yeah, because I'll tell people, I'm like, absolutely, let's go look at these 2 or 3 things. Please keep in mind, these will not still be on the market when it's time for you to make an offer, so we're not gonna go in here looking to purchase anything. And I set that expectation as well. I also tell all my buyers to go to open houses. After I have a buyer agency contract in place, I say, please, 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 go to open houses. Just make sure you write my name down when you sign in, so you don't get spammed. And I literally will say it like that, and that makes people be like, okay, so I have permission to go do this as long as this, So you can use all of those different pieces, especially for those longer term clients. I tell all my long term clients, open houses are your best friend. Open houses are 100% your best friend. All of those things you can use, but I think it just comes down to, again, when we think about the clientele we choose to work with, when we think about, especially those people who aren't ready tomorrow, it's very important to, and we'll get to this in a second, your structures that you have in place to make sure that they all get caught and you take care of them along the way too. But again, primarily remembering that the buyers, when it comes to what you care about and what you want, they do not care. It is what they want and what they care about. My next thing, and this is my big one, is be the education centric agent. This is my soapbox. This is the thing that why I teach here sometimes, when they ask me, like, it's important to know your stuff. Who in here has been licensed for less than a year? Anyone less than a year? Awesome. Less than 2 years? More than 5? Cool. Okay. This applies to all of us equally because people in our industry don't know their stuff. We find this out really consistently. I'm sure you have, as you sat across the table from someone at a closing where you've been negotiating a deal. People don't know what they're talking about. That goes for our clients, but with our clients, it's okay. We don't need them to know what they're talking about. It is okay for our clients to know exactly 0 thing about buying or selling.
I'm gonna make you laugh, but I'm sorry, I'm ADD. I have a listing up in what's in the Poconos, so, like a community, nice, like, lake club. I had an offer, and the buyer insisted on the sewage inspection. They said, we will not go anywhere without every single inspection. I said, like, it's community sewer, like, we have the HOA, like, we want every single inspection. Turns out they just didn't know, like, what their inspection is and what they were inspecting. They just said, like, every box check this.
Right. And unfortunately, in our industry, the lowest common, the low bar is one that people don't clear. People can't get past the lowest bar that we have, which is just knowing how the processes work in a community where you are selling real estate, and then knowing how our own processes work within the industry. Buyers don't know what they don't know. I tell every client, every buyer, whether they're a first time buyer or I signed a buyer yesterday, it's his 11th home purchase. And I tell them, even though whether you've done this 11 times or this is your first time, I expect you to know 0 things. And I set that expectation up front because if I give them permission to not know anything, they're less likely to Google stuff. I can give them permission to come to me and be their source. And I tell them to, and I shouldn't give this away, but you're welcome to steal this. I tell every buyer, Googling things about your transaction is like WebMD. You are always dying. Come to me. I am your doctor in this process. You can ask me all of your questions and I will find an answer that is right for you in your situation because I don't want you to think that you're dying. And so when we talk about education, we give buyers permission to ask us whatever questions that they need to ask. And when you do that, you open up the ability to be their source of education as opposed to the Googles and things like that, the news and all of those things. You also put pressure on yourself in a way that is really important to make sure that you know your things, that you're looking up stuff, that you're researching things. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But it really puts the onus on you as the agent to know what you're talking about. It's very helpful, but it also, it sets you up as the expert in front of the eyes of your client. The next part of that is setting proper expectations for your clients at the beginning. Like I just said, I tell my clients, come to me with your questions. There's no question too small. If you wake up in a cold sweat at 2 AM in the middle of the night, email me about it then. You're not gonna bother me. I will get back to you the next day. I want it out of your head. I want you to be able to go back to sleep and then I can get started on this for you. So we get the right answer for you. You know, these are the things that you position yourself, not just as the person representing them in the transaction, but as their primary resource. Goes a long way in the market where we're seeing more buyers come back in because we're seeing more inventory come in comparatively. We'll talk stats in a little bit, why that's true, especially in Philly. It positions you as the person who is in control and in command as well, which for most buyers, especially for the first time, they need someone that they can believe is that person who will walk through and take care of things. So you set that expectation up front. You also over-prepare. Over-preparing is something that is hard to gauge because we don't really have a standard of preparedness at any given time in the industry. Everyone does things a little bit differently. But preparedness with buyers looks like, oh yeah, we're going and looking at properties. This is the neighborhood you care about. Earlier this week, I previewed several properties in this area, so I have a sense of what we're looking at comparatively. I went through and looked at all the things we're gonna see, not in person, but I went through the listings. I did my due diligence on every property we're gonna see, so I can answer your questions. You know, these little things to be over-prepared for every interaction you have don't take a ton of effort. They just take intention. You know, I talk about time blocking a lot, which we'll talk about a little bit more here in a second, but time blocking is the most annoying thing that every coach and every educator talks about every single time that we're talking business stuff. And the reason is it actually works. It's a thing that you can do that's free to do that will help you organize your schedule and get the things done so that you are prepared every single time. I'm not going to talk about them today. I'm a big open house junkie though. I love open houses and buyer work. And again, that's another whole conversation about preparedness. You can really be in a place to, I generally pick up at least one buyer for every 2 open houses I do.
Did you say buyer work? What houses and buyer?
And buyer work, yeah, in general, buyer work. I think of it that way.
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay, here's a question, you know, on the listing side, we suck at picking up buyers at. open houses. We don't have a listing, how do you do it? Just taking,
well, my business partner, all of his listings, I do all our open houses. Also, there are over 1,000 agents in this office. Many of them have listings. What you can do is you can even, if you know, like for me, I want to do an open house. If it's not one of our personal listings, I want to do one in a highly walkable location. So if I'm doing it on the weekend, I'm very likely to get foot traffic. So I actually have a search set up in Bright for myself that is KW and Power listings bounded on the map. So I can literally click on it, see what's available listed by our office. That matches the criteria that I want. And so that's how I decide when it's not one of ours. But yeah, and I guarantee you there are listing agents in this office that if you are hungry to do open houses, they'll be like, yes, please. And let me tell you, I do not do them on the weekends between, for June, July, or August. I do twilight opens during the summer because so many people go down the shore on the weekends that your foot traffic drops significantly on weekends, but your weekday evenings, early evenings, you'll have a lot more people out and about. So just a little open house tip.
Just another open house tip, make sure you take into account Eagles games on the
Yes.
weekend and Phillies games, because people are literally not.
Yeah.
So.
That's part of the over prepared.
Yeah.
Look at your calendar, you know?
Yeah.
As someone who has scheduled an open house on a weekend when I was absolutely out of town and had known I would be out of town, and because I didn't look at my calendar, I didn't think about it. Just take a second, look at your calendar anytime.
And next year's gonna be a whole different ballgame. Yeah.
With 2026, just, I can't
I think that's a tough one because I experienced the both sides of the aisle, right? I experienced where I've done open houses in like major days, Eagles games and things like that. And the really interested buyer shows up on that day.
Yeah.
Because they have to get in a house.
Right.
And also, right, like, oh, they suck, why did I do it?
Right. And I love a really interested buyer, but I love a moderately interested buyer more. Because a really interested buyer is so much more likely to already have talked to another agent, where a moderately interested buyer, I can talk to and be like, why don't we just talk more about this and see if it makes sense for you? So just, you know, that's why for me, I always try to schedule open houses when I have a sense that there will be a good amount of foot traffic, because I want to cast as wide a net as possible. That's how I get my conversion rate, is by having enough people come through that something sticks, just about every time. Create a syllabus. So I'm a nerd. I love a class syllabus because I like to know all the things that I want to cover in a class, that I want to learn about, that I want to, like, all my resources. So I say sort of because this is a little extra nerdy, but when you think about your buyer consultation, have a syllabus. Know the things that you want to make sure you're going to talk to them about every single time. Know the structure. My sister is a college professor. She has syllabi that she has created for her classes that she can reuse year over year because she's done all the work to get ready for it. So if you put in a little bit of time, a little bit of energy early, create the process and the steps for your consultation, for your open house, whatever it is, for getting ready to do showings. Know every single step, every question that you know is key to each of those things. Print it on a piece of paper and have it in front of you when you do those consultations. It'll help you make sure that you don't miss things, and it'll also make you look, again, prepared. It'll set you apart from other agents when you're working on getting buyers as well.
Are you willing to share your syllabus?
No, absolutely not. However, you probably already have one, you just haven't put it down on paper. Like, you probably know the things that you do. Take the time and work it onto a sheet of paper, because that'll also help you realize that you're missing things too. And my syllabus is not exciting, it is literally bullet points and headings, just so I know the things that I want to make sure I.
I'm sorry, is this syllabus only for the initial buyer consultation or like for the whole process?
Anything, and it is as robust as you want it to be. For my process, all of that lives in command already for me, so my syllabus just exists in the ether of the internet. But for my consultations, for my open houses, I have that checklist, syllabus, whatever you want to call it, so I make sure I hit all the things I want to hit every time. And then I know I talked about time block earlier, but specifically time block for your education. Like, actually build into your schedule an hour a week, 30 minutes twice a week, whatever it looks like for your schedule that is dedicated to market research, to studying your contracts, studying the paperwork and documentation. It might seem repetitive, especially when you talk about paperwork and things, but every time that you intentionally spend time going over things in the actual process, it makes you stronger at communicating them. It also makes you closer to an expert. So when another agent who doesn't know what they're doing tries to fight you on something, you can say, I'm new to this, I know what this is. I had that, this is another fun Mike McCann story. I went up against Mike one time on a client about a contract thing, and it was great, and it was really fun. And not in the moment, but after I was right, it was really fun. And it was only because I had recently spent time working on sections of the contract, just making sure I understood how things worked. And this was 5 years in to me in the business. This wasn't like brand spanking new agent. Like, spending that time with consistency just to reinforce the education of the processes themselves, but also, as we'll talk about in a second, knowing your market, knowing what's happening locally, knowing what's happening nationally, so you can contextualize things for people. When we talk about know your market, there are so many resources available that are free for knowing the market. You can also pay for things. I pay for Keeping Current Matters, which a lot of people are familiar with. It's an online tool that has all kinds of stats and data for national sales. I use it for my scripting, for doing my videos on Instagram and stuff like that. But all of these, Lore, Bright, GPAR, KW Newsletter, Team Meeting, and Micro Business Marketing are free resources that all of you have available to you. These are not extra things, these are not things on top of what you already are looking at, they are all available. What's Lore? Lore is the language of real estate. Yep, Lore is language of real estate. What that looks like, it's trends. This is not the sexy stuff of real estate, these are the numbers and the stats, but KW, our office, has our language of real estate, our stats compared to the rest of the country, the nearest market centers to us as well. So how do our sales as a brokerage look compared to Washington Township, to Pittsburgh? What this does is it lets you contextualize to your clients, hey, you want to know why you should go with me? Look what we do by comparison. So Lore gives you what you need to talk about the brokerage, about our position in the market, about how our market is doing compared to other markets. That's available, if it's not on the dashboard, the KW dashboard, Joe Mandel up at Fishtown has access to that, so just fishtown@kwempower.com and he can give you access to that, but they also have available every month with new data, month to month. Bright MLS, so I don't know if you ever use the market resources in Bright under here, or if you're familiar with any of them. I love them. I think they're incredibly helpful when you're trying to position things in the market, when you're talking to buyers about how the zip code is doing. When you're looking at how quickly things are selling, what average days on market, you can really dial down to very specific information in Bright to look that stuff up. Again, a whole separate class, but one I think is very useful. You also can't mess it up. So go and play around with the market tab and look and just play around with it. You're not gonna mess anything up. You can just kind of figure stuff out with that too. GPAR has a lot of educational resources that as GPAR members you get for free. There are even some classes and certifications that they don't charge for. So go online, make sure you have your GPAR login or whatever available, and just look through the stuff that they provide for free. There's a huge library of stuff for education. I'm gonna come back to partnerships. The KW newsletter, they started a couple of months ago, where they're pulling a newsletter for us for our market every month. I believe that's also available on the KW dashboard, but can also double confirm that. Just another good resource for getting dialed down information specifically in our market. The brokerage team meeting is also, and I promise this isn't like a commercial for it, but like, there's a lot of good information that we get at that every month. It is specific to our market. It's about the things that we are encountering with agents and not necessarily all national news, very dialed down to where we are. And then Michael Lewis Marketing. This is the marketing platform that we have available. I don't actually use it for the marketing stuff because I have my own stuff that I use for marketing. However, I do use their marketing reports. So these are the marketing reports. I created one for everyone. You can take a look at what this looks like. To everyone. You can look up specifically by zip code in Philadelphia what the current market stats are. And you can also set up for Michael Lewis, and I do this. Michael Lewis Marketing will email this to me every day. Or week.
Yeah.
Every week. Day is too much. Every week.
Who do you use for marketing? You said you had your own stuff.
So I have a marketing admin on my team, so he does all of my marketing stuff. Yeah. But this report you can have emailed to you from specific zip codes, and you can have them whenever they send it to you. There's a link to click on that'll take you, and you can search by any zip code that you want to on the site each time. It also lets you subdivide on the website by single family home and condo. So if you're looking for specific condo numbers, you can get those really easily as well. And again, when you set it up in your Michael Lewis Marketing portal that you can get to again through the KW dashboard, you can have it set up for when you want it to be emailed to you, which zip codes specifically you want to have featured when it comes to you. All that kind of stuff you can customize for yourself, and it is a free resource with up-to-date information. So all of these things are free. These are all things that you have access to. The one thing that I skipped over here is partnerships, which I'll talk about a little bit more on the last point, but I put it under here because we have so many partners, not only that are available through KW Power, but just as you are an agent, you build relationships and get to know people. Like my title company that I use is not our in-house title company. We have a great title company here, but I have a long relationship with another title company. Building these relationships gives you a lot of opportunities on top of just knowing the people you work with. Doing things like educational opportunities you wouldn't have. One of my lenders that I work with primarily has a free seminar next week about the use of AI in real estate work. And it's from like a leading person in the industry. It is free to attend as a Zoom meeting, and I'm going to that. Like you're gonna have these partnerships where you have education available to you that's free and that they want you to go and they're gonna support you for it. And even if you never use them, if someone offers you a free seminar about something that's educational that seems appealing, do it. You don't have to commit anything to them. Now, it's nice to have the relationship around it. Like I said, my close relationship with this lender has given me access to educational things. But even if I never sent him business, you would probably still send me these educational opportunities. These folks want to build a relationship with you, they want you to be educated, because again, your lenders, your title folks, inspectors, all these people, the better educated you are as an agent, the more they want to work with you, which is why they're also providing these things to you. They also deal with the agents who suck it, so they want you to have these resources as well. But like I said, all of these things that are listed here, free. All of these things are free. Everything on here, this is free, it's part of you being at KW Power. Michael is marketing. Yep,
Searching where you go.
yep, I'm just saying, free things, we love free things, it's why you use Command. Are there other more robust CRMs out there? Yes, but I don't pay for them. But, yeah,
I've been putting the newsletter on.
okay, let me double check with where they've placed that, because I don't know, does the monthly newsletter template,
They picked that out of any of them.
is it in Command?
Yes.
It's in Command.
Okay, so that's one of
Okay.
those.
No,
Yeah.
it's smart plans, my bad.
Smart plans, okay,
Yeah.
KW Empower monthly newsletter.
Yeah, I think-
Like a 3-minute video.
Yeah.
But the newsletter is not free.
This stuff, this?
The newsletter, you could get the newsletter from Michael Wood, that's, you know, paid.
Yeah, so just the market reports, so I'm just talking about educational pieces here, yeah, so the marketing reports are a free part of Michael Wood's.
Yeah, we create a newsletter that you can use.
There's a KW newsletter that's
Send it to your
Yeah.
database.
Stuff
What's happening in Philadelphia, questions about the market.
Yeah.
We keep listing.
Free things, we love free things, I'm all about free, I want to keep as much money in my pocket at the end of the day as I can. So, all of these are free resources. And then my last point, and this is kind of the biggest one when you are a buyer agent, you think about it more with listings because you think you have to have all these contractors to help with stuff, but if you're gonna be a buyer agent who is positioned as the resource to your sphere, your client base, then you are golden. So I have partnerships again, because every week I am, almost every week, let's be real, but almost every week I am having coffee or lunch or something with one of my partners. Meaning title, mortgage, inspector, there are lots of other categories. Contractors of some kind, building those relationships and having partnerships. Because even though we have a whole list of contractors here that are partnered with KW, it is so helpful if they know who you are. And they want to know who you are, even if it's not a KW internal contractor, any contractor that you have that you recommend, invest in the relationship. Because there are a lot of things that can come out of that. It may be, hey, I have a client with a need, and the wait list for this specific need is really long everywhere, but I have a relationship with this roofer. So I'm gonna call my roofer friend that I know, give them a heads up that my client is calling. Now, is it gonna work every time to bump people to the head of the line? No, but if you have these relationships in place, you can help your clients in your sphere get a very high level of service, and that will always come back to you as well. So being the resource with your partners is a big deal. One of my soapboxes is that secret agents are only cool in movies. And what I mean by that is you have to be visibly present for people to know what you do. Especially as a buyer agent, which again is my whole deal. You gotta get out there and get clients. You gotta let people know what you're doing. You gotta put educational things out there. You gotta tell people, actually we talked about a couple times, these long-term clients, be able to say to people, hey, even if you aren't looking to buy tomorrow, even if you think you're a year out, let's still sit down and talk about it, because you might be closer than you realize, but you don't have the tools and resources to know that, and I can be that resource. You have to be out there putting it out. Again, that's a whole other class about putting yourself out there, but it is super important to not be a secret agent. Build a Jedi Council. So I'm a big Star Wars nerd, so about 50% of any references I make are related to Star Wars. But your Jedi Council, we could also think of it as your board of trustees or your advisory council, whatever you want it to be. Build your Jedi Council. These are the people that you respect, who have things that you need or want in their personalities or their careers. They're people that you trust. They're people who can help grow your business. Maybe not someone sending you 800 referrals, but someone who believes in you, someone who wants to see you succeed. Build your council, 10 to 12 folks that you regularly know, these are my people who are gonna help grow me. And they will, and you give them permission to be tough on you, you give them permission to hold you accountable. And you find that circle of mentors some older, some younger, it doesn't matter age, it's just experiences that they have that you can learn from. So build your Jedi capital so you can be the resource for everyone. Expand your network. This one seems pretty self-explanatory in our industry, but the larger your network, the higher likelihood you are to build a client base. I've been in Philly 10 years this year, so I'm not a native to Philly from Alabama. And I didn't start in real estate when I got here. I was in another career that moved me here. I would not have the success that I've had if I didn't intentionally build a community around myself, build my network. Join, organizations. Tell all of your friends, bully your friends into coming to your open houses. My first 2 years in real estate, I would message my close circle of friends my video about, here's my open house this weekend, and be like, hey, please come and see me. And for my first couple of years, my friends were the bulk of the people that were coming to my open houses, which is crazy, but it made me comfortable talking about properties. It made me comfortable putting on an open house. And of that group, I sold over half of them in the time since the houses they live in now. And the only reason I haven't the other ones is because they're so rich. But like, the network that you have around you, the sphere you have around you, especially, I say starting out that I'm almost 10 years into this, and it's still where so much of my business comes from, even if not directly. So expand that network as best as you can. Look for opportunities to meet new people and get out there and promote yourself in a non-direct way. Don't necessarily walk in and be like, hi, I'm a realtor. Have you bought a house recently? Can I help you with that? That's not, we all know how to network, be intentional with your network, but expand that sphere out. Take on tough transactions. This is one of my favorite things to encourage agents to do. We talked earlier about price point. There are going to be transactions that are things you're not familiar with, are things that scare you, are things that you're not sure how to approach. That might be the style of property, it might be the type of client, there could be any number of things that are uncomfortable for you. Work the transaction, learn how to do it. Resources and mentors around to help get through those things, but the best way to learn is by doing in the industry, as long as you're doing with an understanding that you don't know. If you are doing the stuff things and if you pretend that you know what you're doing, that's not what I'm saying. So just as a disclaimer, don't do them and act like you know what you're doing. But do tough transactions so that you can learn how to do them better and better and better. I know agents who started with like an REO sale of some kind, real estate owned sale, and had no idea what they were doing. But they dug into it. They worked with an agent in our office to learn the ins and outs. They asked our broker 1,000 questions. That was 4 years ago. It is, I would estimate at least 50% of their business now. Because they learned how to do it, they learned how to do it correctly, they asked all the right questions, and now they are a person that can go after that segment of business because they have the confidence to do it and other people are afraid of it. So take on the tough transactions, learn how to do the difficult things. They're not the fun transactions, they're not the ones that you end the day and think, I love my job. But they are the transactions that make you a more powerful and capable agent. Because when you have really, really, really tough transactions and you work through them and you get them to closing, everything else seems so much easier and more fun to do. So it's a contextualizing thing as well. And then the last thing, ask questions. Ask all caps. Ask questions. Lots and lots of questions. You cannot learn if you don't ask questions. It's just like I said with buyers themselves. There are no dumb questions. There are dumb questions as an agent because there's stuff that you should know, but that shouldn't stop you from asking those questions because you need to know it if you don't. So always ask those questions. Ask Vicky, ask agents that you know in our office that have been around forever. Ask me, I guess, if you see me, I'm not always going to know the answer, but I will help you find one. But like, ask questions because when you assume things about a transaction, that is when you find yourself in trouble. There are absolutely dumb questions, but there are even more than that dumb choices. And the dumbest choice is thinking that you know something that you don't actually know anything about. So one of the best ways you can be the resource for your clients is to not think you know everything. To make sure you're asking the questions when you don't know the answer. I regularly do not know the answer. I've been doing this longish time now, and I do not know the answers a lot of the time. Poor Vicky gets just an absurd amount of communication with me, but like, she would rather me ask her questions than have to connect me with legal. You know, like this is not an industry where we ask forgiveness instead of permission. So just keep that in mind as well, especially when you're working with buyers, because think of it this way. Yes, when you have sellers, they are selling an investment, they are getting money from that sale, and that is very stressful in its own way. When you're working with a buyer, they are paying money. They are making a significant investment out of their own pocket, even when they're financing, you know, oftentimes they're still making for them a huge chunk of money out of their own personal savings. And that can be very, very, very stressful. It can be very scary. And it's even worse if they have trusted you to answer their questions correctly along the way, and you had too much ego to know when you didn't know the answer and just roll with it. There's a lot of things in the industry you can roll with, you know, like there's a lot. This is not one of those things. Answering questions for buyers, helping them with process. You have to dial in, you have to work hard, to make sure that you're answering those questions correctly. I know this is a bit of a soapbox for me, so I apologize if it feels like I'm lecturing a little bit, but I find myself on the other side. This is one of the reasons I stopped doing listings, because I would be on the other side of the table with a buyer agent who screwed their clients over. I had a listing a few years ago, at closing, the buyers are there, buyer agent nowhere to be seen. The closing took 7 hours because they didn't have anyone there advocating to make sure their stuff was correctly done. I ended up representing them through the closing to get it accomplished for everybody. That should not ever happen, like ever. So that's why it's like, ask the tough questions, show up, be intentional, work hard for your clients, because it is the absolute worst thing possible when you find yourself at a closing table and the other agent hasn't done that. So don't be that person either, you know. So at the beginning we were talking about panic, we were talking about what's going on in the market. It is my hope that the Panic at the Disco is more like this, which is Into the Unknown from Frozen 2. So instead of panic, going into the it was more effective in the PowerPoint that I originally made when it was started playing on its own when I got to this line, but they don't do that in Google Slides, so thank you for your imagination. We have a couple more minutes left, so really quickly, I just wanted to show you a couple of quick data points because we're talking about education. This is from the May market report. This is national. This is not Philly specific, and that's important because I want to talk about kind of the comparisons there really quickly. 70% of Americans are concerned about a potential housing market crash. Are we concerned about a housing market crash? Yes or no?
Yes.
No, we are not concerned about a housing market crash, and that is not propaganda. The data shows that there should be no concerns about that in our current climate. There are plenty of things that can happen economically that can change that, but in the climate that we're looking at right now with the data and numbers and the economy that we have, as well as inventory, we are not concerned about a housing crash right now.
Let me tell you one thing, and I'm sorry to.
Yeah.
Yeah, throwing things out there, but a lot of people, and I'm in that category too, are just concerned about the instability. Like, it's not even about the potential crash, it's about us not knowing what the hell is going on.
Yeah.
The way things are going at the helm, like, we're kind of like, where are we going?
Absolutely, and that is a fully valid concern. And I think it's really important, it's great question and a great topic, because that's part of our job, is to help communicate the difference between general uncertainty and what's happening in the actual market. The general uncertainty in the economy, fully valid. Uncertainty in general, fully valid. How that impacts the market in which we work when we're talking with people about buying, selling real estate, is that despite all of the uncertainty that there is, with where we are in the market, with where all the data looks like, what all the people who are paid and brilliant about this are saying when they look at this number, these numbers, is that that is not a concern for us right now. The important thing there, though, is it's not a concern. The housing market crash, not a concern for us. It is for 70% of Americans. So learning how to translate, like we just did, we talked about it, saying that's fully valid. The uncertainty, and again, validating people's feelings about that goes so much further than commiserating. You know, where you say that is a totally valid thing to do. Yeah, exactly. And, not but, and if you haven't done both before, or empower, whatever the new thing's called. Great, Jerry's thing, it's gonna be great, by the way, this fall. And we're not concerned about that coming from or being or caused by the housing market. Because in 2008-9, it was the housing market.
Who's the mortgage?
Yeah, the mortgage crisis is what caused the housing crisis, which is what helped tank the economy at the time. We are not concerned about the housing market being the instigator of anything. And so that is a reassurance we should provide. 32% of the people who are planning to make a purchase, 1 in 4 who plan to buy are saying they're delaying it. 1 in 8 who plan to sell are delaying it. All right, this is information that y'all need to know. It's not something we're going to communicate out to other people, but just know this is what we're stacked against here. You have a lot of people that are second guessing choices right now in investment. Oh, that didn't go very well. All right, anyway, so and that said, inventory. That's what that's our buzzword right now. Inventory. We have 30% more inventory nationally this year than we did last year. Still below pre-pandemic levels, but that is a huge increase in inventory year over year compared to where we've been since pandemic levels. Home price growth is also slowing down. Depreciation is not what we're talking about. We're talking about the speed at which things appreciate, the amount of appreciation, as well as the amount of home prices going up. Prices are still going up, even though they're not going up as quickly as they were. They are still going up. And that's an important thing to remind people that delaying their purchase because of any other factors that aren't directly related to housing is dangerous for them in their long-term financial health because prices continue to go up. Continue to delay, even if you're waiting on interest rates, speaking of which. That was a nice little thing there. We're talking about stability in mortgage rates. So pretty stable in March. We saw a lot of fluctuation in April. This goes back to what's going on everywhere, the total economic picture. Rates are a little bit volatile right at this moment. But let's also think about what bottom means. Within the 6% range, within a point, you know, in a few directions, there's a lot of movement back and forth there, you know? But what we're not seeing is up to 8 and down to 5 and up to 7 and then down to 5 back to 9. We're not seeing that level of volatility. It's very much confined in that kind of plus or minus 6% range right now.
From the last slide, it makes less sense to wait to sell. Because the
It does.
prices are going up slower than they were a few years ago.
It does. It actually does make less sense now, for sure.
I will throw this out there, like, the city is pretty weird, like, everything you're saying applies, but it's really depending on my zip code, like,
Yeah.
19115 and 19116, I have a buyer who wants to buy an investment there, can't find nothing, I keep getting out,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Not
So
just
some
zip
zip
code,
codes-
block.
And that's the fun
Even
thing
block,
too. Yeah.
out here it's block, out there it's zip code, but like, how can you say like the market's slowing down when it's like, right here it is, like there it is. and
Yeah. So one of the best things that I can say for that, and this is the conversation I have with people, is Philadelphia does not count. So, and here's why. In 2008 and 9, they took Philly out of the top 20 cities for data purposes, because even in the housing crisis, Philly was so minimally impacted compared to the other big cities that we were skewing the data, so that we weren't getting accurate data nationally. Philly has never been added back to that list of top 20 cities. Because even now, yeah, we're still much more stable compared to all the other markets. And I'm really talking about, you know, even the near suburbs, like they're definitely a lot more in line with what we have nationally, but Philadelphia proper defies expectations. The plus and minus of that is we don't have the crazy bad swings, but we also don't have the crazy good swings. You know, 2021 when people were paying $120,000 over asking outside the city, the highest over asking I had for any of my clients here in the city was $15,000. We just don't have the same swings in either direction. That is a great data point for talking with buyers. Because you can say you have a much more stable investment long-term here. Philly basically averages about 4% year over year in appreciation. It's almost a straight line. You have very little weight in that, which is not typical. And because we are technically the poorest big city in the country, it's still affordable to purchase in Philly as a big city compared to other places. The other stat that I love, and we won't go into rental conversion today, but I'm always happy to talk about rental conversion, is that Philly is one of 4 cities in the country where it's more expensive to rent than to pay mortgage. Rental for the same amount of space and condition in Philly is more expensive than a monthly mortgage payment. So hugely important for people who are trying to decide what does that look like. And with a lot of first-time home buyer grants and other options in Philadelphia, there are a lot of ways to help folks get over that hurdle of the renting versus buying situation there. In addition to that, my last thing on mortgage stuff, because I know we went over, sorry about that. When we're looking at mortgage rates projections, they are currently projected to go down this year. That can always be revised, but that's an important thing to people when they're talking about the fear and uncertainty throughout the year this year. Rates are going to continue to come down by all projections. That's not so useful for you today, but when you're talking to someone who's like, I've been thinking about buying this fall. Great, let's go ahead and talk about it. Set that buyer consultation. Go ahead and start having a conversation with someone who's like, I think October, November. Great, we actually think that rates are gonna be going down by that time. So let's go ahead and get you positioned so that when the time comes, you're ready to go and hit the ground running. You know, so we don't necessarily love the idea of rates going down because it makes people wanna wait. Like we want rates to go down. Absolutely want them to go down. But for a lot of buyers, that makes them go, oh, well then maybe I'll hold off and see what happens. That's totally fine. These are projections. They may not go down. Do you know what's going to continue to happen though?
Prices are gonna go up.
Prices are still going to go up. That's not a projection. That is a trend. So these little things you can talk to people about to help kind of translate the numbers are really important. You learn these things by looking at these numbers, by doing the education, looking at the lore like you talked about. Go through your Bright, get all those free market reports. You know, these are how you learn those numbers. And then last one that's really important for folks who plan to be doing this for a long term. Sellers who use the same agent are going down, 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 down.
People are loyal.
People are not loyal, but it's only because we're not continuing to earn their loyalty. So that's when we talk about being the resource. If you can position yourself as a listing agent, again, this isn't specifically buyer, but as the resource for your clients throughout the time, once you sold the home to them, if you're doing both buying and listing and you are their buyer agent, you work your tail off for the next 7 to 10 years to make sure you're still their go-to person. You know?
You're gonna laugh, but you're right. My dad used a realtor, like Russian guy back in the day. I am a realtor now, and I still call that guy and bother him with like stupid questions, and personal questions and whatever, because
He's maintaining a relationship.
if I had to hire an agent, like couldn't hire me, like I would hire him.
Right. And that is really, really rare because agents don't do a good job of fostering those relationships over time. So a buyer agent who also wants to do listings, the best thing you can do is be the best possible buyer agent after the close. Do it before, give them a good experience, but when it really starts is after settlement day. That's when you can kick into high gear and build that loyalty and build that pipeline. At least half of the transaction, maybe not, I'd say probably about 30 to 40% of my transactions every year are direct referrals from past clients. And that's just because staying engaged with them, sending them information, newsletters, data, checking in on their kids. You know, if there's that's a whole other conversation to have there. But again, repeat business is falling words. Repeat business is falling. That is directly related to whether or not we're the resource for our clients. I threw a lot of things at you, and it was me talking a lot more than I ever intend to. But all of these things are things that you can apply to being a really strong buyer's agent in a market that in Philadelphia, by the statistics, we are a balanced market. We are not a seller's market anymore. We are a balanced market, meaning there's about equal buyers as there are listings. I think it's a 6-month absorption rate right now, which is true balance. That can be really scary when for the last few years it's been pretty rapid for sellers. There's so much opportunity for buyers right now. And a lot of people haven't put in the time and energy and effort to be really effective in that space. Now is the time. If you can really dial in and commit to knowing your buyer consultation is tight, knowing your process, having those syllabi created for your process, being really intentional with your education of buyers, you will find that that segment of your business can and will grow. It just requires a high level of intentionality. And these are all resources that you can use to have that intention too. So
What is absorption rate?
it is the balance between number of listings available and the number of buyers in the market. So how many months of listings do we have if every buyer were to purchase?
That's the same thing as inventory accumulation.
They're related, yeah, they're related. One is more of a time period scale, whereas one is actually like numerical. Yeah.
Right, that's,
I'm sorry.
I think that's true, except in the $300,000.
Oh, yeah. Well, the kind of the 250 to 350 segment is absurd. The buyer, that's where buyers are. Like, of the 8 buyers I have right now, half of them are in that range. So, and there's similar amount of inventory in that range compared to other ranges, but it's selling faster because there's more buyers in that segment. Whereas when you're looking at like 500 plus, the days on market is stretched like it is.
Yeah.
So that's also the other thing to get clients comfortable with too, because buyers are gonna look at that and they're like, oh, this has been on the market for 5 months. The response to that is, that doesn't mean what it used to mean. You know, is there something wrong with it? No, we're just in a place where stuff is sitting longer on the market now. So it's not the same ejection point that it used to be for the last few years when you see a longer day on market. For those who work with sellers too, that's an important point to communicate to them as well. Is like, hey, we're not gonna necessarily sell this overnight. This is not 2021. Days on market on average, and that's the Bright reports. When you look at the Bright marketing reports, you can look at for the price point and the zip code you're in, you can look and see what comparable days on market are. You can give real-time data to your clients. And that lets you, again, be able to manage those expectations in this current market.
If you don't mind me asking, Ray, you might know the answer, I just think it'd be really cool for everyone to find out. And I'm a native, like I was born here, so
Yeah.
shame on me, but why are we such a balanced market, right? Like farm and all that stuff has left, feeling like, why are we so stable? Why do people like, what, I don't wanna say this, cause like I came back, I wanna live here, but like, why do people wanna live here? Like,
There are a lot of,
It's magic.
so
yeah,
we have the second
I got a
largest
lot of education.
collegiate population, university population in the country. We have the largest collegiate and university population on the East Coast in one city. Our proximity to New York and DC always gives us a level of balance from folks who move in from there. So even in 2021, when there was this mass exodus from the city of Philadelphia, with people purchasing and moving out, we almost equally balanced that with people moving into Philly. It was a slight drop, but that keeps us in such a stable place because we are so much less expensive while still being accessible to those two cities. Also, our position in the mid-Atlantic on the train lines, as well as having a hub for airline, all of those factors contribute to the stability of our city.
That was great. That's,
Yeah.
I just wanted to hear your take.
Yeah.
That was great, thank you.
I mean, and the other thing too is, I know that people have their ups and downs with SEPTA, but we have a fairly robust public transit system here. And that helps significantly too, because people can live further out from the center of the city and still have access to it, and that helps us as well. So, yeah.
Take them out of the West Coast.
Oh, yeah. That's a whole
Yeah.
separation there. The other thing too that helps Philly is being across the river from New Jersey. You know, we have another full population that moves across the river back and forth. And that provides a level of stability. And Delaware, I mean, just where are we positioned in the region specifically? Because I mean, again, one of the reasons why KW Power is able to be New York, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, and New Jersey.
Yeah. Makes you wonder.
It used to be where it started out. So, well, that's a whole other scandal.
Yeah.
With how DC started. Great podcast. Any other questions about anything? Yes, oh, great.
I read about the buyer's designation. Do
Mhm.
you have that?
I do not, no.
Okay, and then can you just talk about how?
Yeah, so there are extra specialty designations you can get, like, certified buyer, or it's a C. there's a certified listing representative, a certified buyer specialist, something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
They're great for the sense of just extra education. I don't think there's a single buyer out there who cares. And that's kind of what it comes down to for me. It's like, I could always throw some letters and then my name for the, being able to say, yes, I have this certification.
Yeah.
But I don't need it at this point personally, just because of the experience that I have and the other educational opportunities that I do get. You know, I mean, I would take it if I thought having that designation would bring me more clients. And I don't think it, I would rather take that time, and I call it return on energy, that's like a return on investment. I'd rather take that energy I would spend on that and even apply it to something else. Yeah. Not to turn you off from it, but I just, it's never, the one that I would do, and again, there are all kinds of certifications and designations out there you can do. The one that I actually intend to do, because not for the, I have the certification, but because I think it would be helpful, is the certified negotiation expert certification. So I do intend to do that one, because again, for me, it comes down to, do I think there's an educational component to whatever this is that is going to provide return to me of some kind in my business, so, yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions, comments?